Hello and welcome to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly. My co-hosts for today's show are Janet Coursey and Joyce Gatchenberger, and our guests are Valerie Runyan and Ned Barnett. And the topic of the show is understanding public relations. But before we get started, I'm going to let our co-host and Ned read a few quotes for us. Jan, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some hire public relations officers. Daniel J. Borston?
Yes. And Joyce?
Sounds
Sure.
right.
I was only in college, unfortunately, for a year. I think my major was public relations, and I had no idea what it meant, except it seemed maybe attainable. James L. Brooks.
Yeah.
And Ned?
I am an officer in Her Majesty's Royal New Zealand Navy. I am a public relations officer in the Royal New Zealand Navy. Sounds good, doesn't it? Mark Hadlow.
Yep.
All right. And Janet, please introduce our first guest.
I'd be delighted to. Our first guest is Ned Barnett. Ned is a marketing and PR representative. He is the owner of Barnett Marketing and Communications. Ned, please tell us a little more about your background, where you're from, how you got into marketing, and I understand you're a history buff of some sort.
I am a fantastic history buff. I was on the History Channel on 9 different programs as the on-camera historian, and then I did behind-camera research for 5 other programs. So I've done that a lot. I've written in history. It's what I would have done if I could have made a living at it. So instead, I just kind of enjoy it on my own. I got into PR in kind of the backdoor way. I was failing French in my first quarter in college, and I did a little research.
So when you fail French, go to PR?
PR was the only major at the University of Georgia that did not require a foreign language. So I shifted that, and I found that was really my calling. But I didn't expect it to be my calling. It was just a way to not fail out of school. But I got into it. I stuck with it as a career. I got into book publicity when, during the early 80s, I was writing a lot of books that were being published by various business publishers, and they weren't promoting it, and the books weren't selling well. And I was on royalties, so I wanted them to sell well. So I, showing my naivete, I asked them if they'd mind if I promoted my own books. And they said, fine, go for it. And suddenly all my books were selling out the whole press runs.
Wow.
And because I was promoting them, I knew how to do it. And then 3 of my publishers asked me to promote their other books. So that's how I got into the business of promoting books, was when my publishers asked me to promote their other books.
Okay.
And that was in 1985, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow.
I've always had a few clients who are authors. I generally have at least one client that's a publisher. And it's not my only thing I do, or it wasn't my only thing I did in my career, but pretty much now that is my exclusive focus, is working with writers, because I have I've written 38 books that have been published.
Okay.
And I have a passion for writing, and I have a real passion for authors like Valerie. I like helping them. It gratifies me to be able to help them.
Well, and you have a knack as well as trying to figure out how to get something out there. Because you told us on one show, you've been on the show before, and you told us on one show where you had a medical book and you knew how to market that to where it would be bought, because there was a certain budget that the administration was allowed to spend for a book. There was a cap.
Right.
And you were able to sell out that first edition.
Right.
Because you knew that cap.
Yeah. The book was aimed at hospital administrators or assistant administrators who were being asked to take over marketing, and they didn't know what it was. Marketing was what their wife did at the grocery store. They had
Right.
Yeah, they had
That's
no
funny.
idea what it was. So I wrote a book on hospital marketing, and because these people had an authorization limit of $500, they could spend $500 without asking permission. We priced the book at $497. And we sold 1,000 copies at $497.
They probably thought, we're getting a bargain here.
Yeah.
Probably true.
Yeah.
Probably true.
But to me, it worked out real well. It was the most profitable book I have done. At the time, I made $57,000. If you look at what that means today, it's and I did just before I came over here, it's $113,000.
Yeah.
So that was a huge, profitable book venture for me.
And you went to school in Athens, Georgia?
Athens, Georgia, University of Georgia, in the
And what year was that?
that was in 1973. I graduated.
Oh, okay. All right.
which tells you that I'm older than I look.
I was going to relate to a little bit because I lived in Atlanta for 12 years, but I think you're actually a little before my time.
Yeah,
Just a bit.
I grew up in Atlanta, so don't you know?
Oh, yeah.
I've spent the rest of my time in life since I moved away from the South learning to drop that accent.
Yes, I know.
Y'all come now.
Y'all
yeah.
come. Yeah, I loved Atlanta. Now, Joyce, you were also in the hospitals because you were
Yes, yes.
RN for 35 years, so you kind of
Yes.
know exactly what he's talking
Yes,
about. When
I
it
do.
came to-
Marketing is important, and it's something, as he said, most people think your wife does it at the grocery store. Yes.
You know, when we think of authors, we always think of authors as a novelist, with a crime story or a science fiction or young adult. But no, anyone can, you're an author if you're out there writing technical books. You're still an author.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of the 38 books I've had published, 13 were novels. The others were all nonfiction, and most of the nonfiction were technical or how-to.
Okay.
And
And
It-
how-to are huge.
yeah, and my next book is going to be how-to. It's on how to write a book and why you should write it. And it's for people who are like executives or independent consultants or professionals who need to build their business or their practice. And how I talk about how a book can be used to build that practice. And then the second half of the book is 40 different marketing techniques that really work, even though most people don't even think about them.
Okay, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about something we talked about earlier today when I was speaking to you on the phone. So, Joyce, I'm going to let you introduce our next guest. Our next guest is Valerie Runyan.
Certainly, and thank you. And Valerie, I'm very glad you're here today. Our next guest is Valerie Runyan. Valerie is the author of Quandaries of Love, which talks about intimacy in many different kinds of relationships, including straight heterosexual and those who often veer from what is often considered the normative relationship. Not only has she written about these variations, she has lived them as well, exploring different ways people can be intimate with one another. Valerie is the founder of Golden Women. She's a trained and certified life coach who deals with 50-plus women who are playing the back nine, quote unquote, that time in life when they have done it all for others and can now do it all for themselves. Please tell us more, Valerie, about the person and what led you to write the book.
Well, thank you. What led me to write the book was my different experiences in less than conventional relationships. And what led me to found Golden Woman is because I heard the saddest thing I think I've ever heard in my life. An older woman who called herself a writers group groupie. And I told her, well, every group needs a groupie. And she said, well, I don't write because I'm too old. I missed the boat on becoming a
You're
writer.
talking to the wrong crowd here.
right.
Yeah. Go ahead,
And
though. Go
I
ahead.
told her, I'm like, no, you haven't. No, that's not true at all. So that very day, I went home and I was looking for a title for my coaching practice. And that's when I'm like, Golden Woman, for 50-plus women who, are on the back nine, of life. Like, they've taken care of everyone else their entire lives. And now they're in their 50s and they can do for themselves now. So they can write now. They can take the writing seriously. They can either publish or not publish. They can do whatever they want with their writing so long as they are writing, which is, what is my passion for them, to just write.
Well, I know that everyone on this panel can relate to what you're talking about. Now, Ned, you started out early in life as an author,
I did.
and I started out early in life as an author. Jan, you did not.
No, I did
And
not.
Joyce, you really didn't either.
I did not.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Jan, you actually started about, what?
8 years ago.
Yeah, but you actually started getting serious about it about 6 years ago.
True. So I'd hit the 59 plus when I started. And I wouldn't have started if a friend of mine hadn't said after I wrote this thing, my God, get it published.
Yeah.
I needed somebody else to push me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Joyce, what what prompted you to write when you did?
I wrote a lot of medical articles during my career, which some were published in a variety of publications, but I'd never written a book of things that were not medical. And I had quite a dysfunctional family growing up, and after I retired, I said, it's time to put what I know in my heart and my brain down on paper because it's important. And since I'd been a nurse for so many years and encountered so many other families and people and women who had the same type of dysfunctional families, I could do some good. Because I knew there were other people out there just like me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I wrote.
Yeah. And so, Valerie, give us a little bit of your background. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Los Angeles, California.
Okay, so not too far from here.
No. And I've been writing my whole life. I've been writing since I was 5 years old.
Okay.
And throughout my life, raising 2 kids through 2 marriages and 2 divorces, I've always maintained writing. That was my mainstay.
That was your escape.
Not necessarily my escape, but my actually breath. It's writing is like breathing for me.
Uh-huh.
And that was my consistency. That was the thing that just gave me air.
Okay. So what were you writing when you were younger?
I was writing everything. I was kind of rewriting other books, and then I started writing on my own. Then I wrote a book that I got published when I was in the 3rd grade about the sun.
Okay.
And I did the illustrations. I wrote the text, and I helped with the binding of it, and I helped with the cover art of it. And it's like, it was very easy. It was so easy for me, and everybody praised me for it. And a third grader, so precocious, so talented, and I was like, thank you, but just like breathing.
So it was a children's book.
I was in school, so I guess it was a children's book, but it was about the sun. It was a project. We had to write a paper.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually a paper we had to write, and I decided to do a book.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Valerie, tell us about Quandaries of Love.
Quandaries of Love is
As she breathes deeply.
Mm-hmm.
several narratives of the different types of relationships that I have personally lived through. Same sex, opposite sex, differently abled, a committed couple plus one, intergenerational. So not necessarily all about just sex, but intimacy on every level, not just, on emotional levels. And one of my pieces, she's in her 50s, and she's closer to 50 than she is to 40, as she says in the book. And she comes out as an older lesbian. And I'm like, that surprised me, because as I was writing it, I was going to allude to her coming out. But as I was writing it, there's a phrase in the book, and the young girl that she has the weekend fling with says, she said, the older woman says, "I'm not out," and the younger girl says, "Really?" It's just, "No, I'm not outside of this house." And that surprised me, because she just wrote it. She just wanted to come out, so she came out.
Is this book? It is fictional, or is
Yes,
this?
it is
Oh, it is.
fictional.
Okay, because the way you're telling it, I'm thinking, these people are.
That's right.
Well,
it sounded
when I write, I am each character.
Yeah, that's the way we all. I know.
Yes.
I write that way. Yeah.
Yes.
So yes, so she wrote her coming out.
All right.
Same in my book. I have an older woman who comes out in my book. That
Yes, you do. That's right.
yeah. And you know what is surprising is, since writing that book, I have met so many that in fact have done just that
Yes.
in their older years and in their
Yes.
more mature years.
Yes.
That finally said, okay, you know what? Now it's time for me to be
Yeah.
who I really am.
Well, and sometimes it's just about love.
yeah.
It's to the point to where now it's not so much about necessarily the sex. It's about the love.
Love.
If I want to love this person, I'm going to love that
Yes.
person.
That's right.
You know.
Yes.
That's right.
And I think that's what people fail to understand. And I'm
Yes.
sure that's a little bit about what your book's about.
Yes. Well, in the same story, the younger girl says, she's trending because there are several programs, especially on Netflix, where they're older couples. They divorce, but the lawyers are the ones who come out.
Yes.
They're married to women, but they come out because they've had a 20 some odd year relationship.
Mhm.
It's my favorite show on
Yes.
Netflix.
Yes. So that's why she says she's trending. And there are other things, there are other programs out there also where, older adults are coming out, and it's fine. It's, so it's okay. So she finally accepts that, okay, it's fine. It's okay. So,
So when did this book come out?
this book came out actually at the end of, let's see, this is now December. Came out earlier this month, actually.
Oh,
recent.
okay. So recent.
Yes, it came out earlier this month, and the paperback, the softback version came out 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yes, the ebook was out for a couple of weeks, and then the softback version came out just 2 weeks ago.
And where is it available?
Well, the softcover version is because I have to get my author webpage together.
Mhm.
Right now, it's on my bookshelf at bookbaby.com. It's called shop.bookbaby.com
Okay.
with Bookbaby Publishing.
Okay.
It's
that's
also
where it is.
available on Amazon, but you have to know where to look.
Yeah.
Are you going to be
Yes.
putting this on Draft to Digital? Ned, I think you know about Draft to
Mhm.
Digital now.
Well, I don't know about that, but whatever Ned,
I want it to be broadly based, but initially, because Amazon will preferentially promote books on their site if you're only on Amazon,
Mhm.
I wanted to focus on that because 80% of all the books sold in the world are Amazon. And if they will promote your book, you're going to get more sales. Once that has stabilized, then I want to bring in the other platforms as well because they're all important, but they're important in the margins. They're important within that 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Valerie, do you feel like sometimes people are talking in a foreign language when they talk to you about what you're going to do with your book? Because there is so many different variations of things that you can do.
Well, Ned is very great at explaining exactly what each platform means, what each each procedure means.
Uh-huh.
So no, I don't.
Oh, good.
As long as Ned explains it to me, I'm fine.
Yeah.
There's something that I noticed just within the past month, and then I checked it out and confirmed it. Barnes & Noble is de-emphasizing Nook. Used to be,
Yes.
whenever you walked into a Barnes & Noble, right up front, right by the door, there was a table there with the Nook.
I remember
Now
that.
they're not there. They're not there anymore. And while it's a legacy platform, if they're not promoting it, if they're not selling the platform or the readers, then it's going to be less and less important. They realize they just couldn't compete with Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we've all learned, or I know
Yes.
Joyce and I have learned,
Yes.
Draft to Digital is a great place to go when the time
Yes.
comes to,
Yes.
because they get your book out there all over the
Mhm.
world on every ebook
Mhm.
platform.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about public relations, it's not just a person standing there at the microphone saying, hello, I'd like you to look at my new book or read my new book or purchase it. It is the total, as we talked before, brand.
Mm-hmm.
What is your brand? How do you sell it? How do you get people to notice you, your publications, your book, your website, your email, your business cards, your everything, how
Yeah.
you dress, how you look, and how you
Yes.
write.
The author website's
Yeah.
really important, to get that up and going,
Mhm.
because people are going to want to know more about you, and especially that book.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
I am working diligently at that. I really am.
Okay. Well, according to, I'm going to read a little bit here from the prgroup.com. After publishing is complete, constructing a publicity campaign is crucial. Public awareness is the first step in generating sales. Between our other books or even other jobs, most authors have enough on their plates without worrying about the stress of publicity. Hiring a good publicist ensures that your books reach extends beyond just niche audiences, reaching a vast market of potential purchasers. And that is true, but we talked earlier, Ned, about how some people really have a hard time affording a PR person.
Yes.
And the prices can vary greatly from one PR person to the next. So let's start there first. Let's start with the cost. If you have several choices, how do you narrow that down? You can't always go with who is charging the lesser amount because they may not be able to produce what you need. So how can you decipher where to go when it comes to looking for a PR person?
You really need to look at the track record, at clients that will speak well of them, of what they've done. If you see somebody, for instance, if you were to come across this program, if I hadn't been here, and you saw Valerie, you might say, well, Valerie, how did you arrange this? Who did you talk to? That would be a good reference. If you just go with the services, there's two things that can happen. You can get somebody who's a low-price provider, but what they do is create a one-size-fits-all because they can't make any money if they customize the program for each person individually. That does not help you. That's just wasted money. If you go with a big firm, unless you are a James Patterson or something like that, you're so small that, again, you get the one-size-fits-all program. This is the death of people. I was talking to a man in Atlanta earlier this weekend, and he'd been considering going with a firm that would give him 10 radio interviews for $20.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, and what are the odds that those radio interviews have anything to do with what you're really about? It's one size fits all. He can't make any money if he customizes it.
Well, and we have to be realistic too when it comes to radio. We've discussed this in the past. Radio does not necessarily sell books. What radio does is bring recognition to your name.
Yes, and I want to get to that in a minute. But to give you an alternative, what I do is I buy several databases, such as Gordon's Radio List, which is a great one, and it's reasonable price. If you want to do it yourself for like $350, you can get Gordon's Radio List, and you're going to get 1,000 radio programs. And what I do is I buy that, and then I sort through it so each are specialized. So if I have somebody who is writing crime fiction, I've got radio interviews for that. If I have somebody who's in the Christian market, I've got that. Somebody who's like Valerie, I have different niche markets that I can go to and just so that I can get people on programs that really matter to them. That's the first step.
Yeah.
The second step, and this is critical, and people generally forget this, it's not enough to be on the radio, as you just mentioned. What I want them to do is take the URL from the broadcast and put it on their website and then send it out to all of their platform. And if they don't have a platform, create a virtual platform and send it out to them. Now, here's what a virtual platform is. Facebook has lots of groups for writers.
Yes.
There are groups that are just set up to promote your book. And the ones I've joined, the membership is over 1 million people.
Yeah.
So I can reach 1 million people by promoting a book on those sites. Now, there's a lot of overlap. People join multiple groups and all that kind of stuff. But even it's only 500,000 people, a third of 1 million people. It's still a huge audience. And you don't need to have many people respond relative to the total before you've got good sales. And again, then beyond that there are groups for writers about erotic fiction or about alternative erotic fiction, which is where Valerie fits in. Or there are people who write about how-to books or mysteries, crime mysteries, or horror or science fiction. You get those groups, you become active in them, and that creates your alternative, your virtual platform. To do this, I recommend real quickly just three things. First of all, you start going on there and commenting on what other people are saying. You become aware. Then after you've made that awareness, you start posting your own items there, just about the writing, about the narrow focus of the group. Then third, then you start promoting your own work. But people will already recognize your name. They'll have seen you coming through. They'll say, oh, okay, Valerie is a writer of alternative erotic fiction. So I will listen to what she has to say, and when she starts talking about quandaries of love, I'll check it out.
One of
Yeah.
the things to back up a little bit about what you had said too, when it came to getting the URL and posting them, we actually have a couple people who've taken our show and posted it on their website.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a lot of authors will do that. They'll at least put the audio on there, but we
Yep.
actually have had people put the video on there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of fun because I Pat Ritter is one in Australia, and Mimi Emmanuel as well. And it's fun to pull up their website and see that video right there. It's
Yeah.
for me, it's great, but
Yeah.
it's effective for them because it shows they're out there trying to communicate with the rest of the world.
That's
Right.
right.
Yes.
And it also, as you mentioned, it benefits you. If people do that, and for your program, then your program's going to get a wider audience, and you're going to have a greater awareness. So that'll make you more successful. So you're going to want to have people on who are going to do that.
And then when I'm successful, they're more successful.
Exactly.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
So we're all basically we're all helping each
Yeah.
other. Is
Yeah.
what
Right.
we're doing.
Yeah.
But the appearance on the radio or a write-up in a newspaper or a magazine or online, that's the first step, not the last step. That's the first step. That gives you the tool. Then you go out and promote it to, on your website, on YouTube, and in the virtual network you can create using Facebook groups.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I know, James, you and I talked about this exact same thing because we talked about how can you, in little ways, promote your book. And we said every time we go somewhere, we carry our books with us. If it's a grocery store, if it's a dentist office, if you're going on a plane trip, if you're going to do something maybe at a seminar, you carry those books with you, and you may lay it down, you may inadvertently leave it somewhere that, you may have an extra copy and it just happens to be left there. Maybe your business card is in there, maybe not. It just kind of is part of your day. And inadvertently, somebody will say, "What are you reading? Is that good? Have you read other ones by that author?" It's just part of the PR process. Just
I
like you
actually
were
take
saying.
3x5 cards and I will print them out on my own printer and laminate them. And I do exactly what you said. If I'm at the grocery store, sometimes I'll go to the book section of a store and just put the cards up in the
There you
section,
go.
and at the airport when I'm traveling, I do the same thing. Those cards are so easy to just leave on a table somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
May I share something?
Sure.
When the when I got my box of books, I was going to the FedEx, my local FedEx, and I was mailing them to a couple of people. And the young girl behind the counter, so she's like, "Oh, that looks interesting. So what it's about?" And so I told her what it's about. It's about the different types of love relationships that we as human beings tend to find ourselves in throughout our lifetime. And she says, "Oh, okay." And then she says, "Did you write that?" I'm like, "Yeah," because she looked at my ID
Yeah.
and saw the book cover. And I said, "Yes, I did." So she's like, "Can I have one?" I'm like, "Yes." And after I mailed those to her, I ran back home and got a copy and ran back to the FedEx, and I autographed it right in front of her.
Mhm.
And I told her she was my first face-to-face
Yeah.
autograph of
That's
my
cool.
book. And
Uh-huh.
so, and I stuck my card in it too. I have a business card, and I stuck my card in it as well, somewhere in the book. And that was like the coolest
I
thing
don't. You feel like
ever.
you're an author now, right?
yeah.
It's just it was it was so titillating. It was so great.
One thing I like to emphasize is she autographed it. When you autograph a book, you're not just, if you give somebody a book, they may or may not read it.
Mm.
When you autograph it to them, they become a fan.
Yeah.
They will not let that book go. They will put it on their coffee table. I know this author.
Yeah.
They become a fan,
Yes.
and then they become someone who is out telling others about the book.
It's interesting you should say that because as an author and a radio host, when people come into the studio, I'll give them a copy sometimes, but I feel odd signing it for another author. I don't know why that is. If it's someone else, I will gladly sign it for them. But when it comes to someone just taking a book home when they leave the studio, I rarely sign them. And I probably should get into the habit of doing it.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking, well, they're not going to look at me the same way because they're an author already.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like a fan.
If you recall, when you gave me your books, I asked you to autograph them.
Yes, you
to me
did. Yes, you
because
did.
because again, I have a shelf in my office that is just autographed books. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to put it there.
Yeah.
After I read it, I wanted to put it there.
That's exactly what I do. You
Yeah.
know, I'll put the books.
And the kids' books, you autographed it to my grandkids, and that made it a special gift for them.
Oh, that's right. You did have me
Yeah.
autographed
And
it,
use
too.
your special pen. Everybody has.
That's right.
Everybody has
Yeah,
a
yeah.
special pen.
Yes, everyone
Yeah,
has
a special pen.
Yes,
Yeah,
I do.
There you go. See, PR.
It is. It's so exciting when you get to share what you've done, and I'm kind of humbled when that happens. It's like, you know, because I don't feel like I'm anyone. I'm just another person on this earth like everyone else. So when they get excited, you're thinking, why are they so excited? You know,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a real quick story. Something that happened very similar to yours. I used to be a server, and I was waiting on someone in this little restaurant, and this young lady was there reading a Dean Koontz book. And she was into chapter 5, I think, and she was going, I'm really having a trouble struggling through this one, and I like Dean Koontz as well. And I said, give it a chance. One more chapter. I promise you, you're going to like this book. So, and I said, but if you want a good book, and I was promoting my book, it was in the stores. So I promoted my first book, and I told her, I said, you know, and she goes, where would I get that? I gave her the synopsis, and I said, oh, it's at Barnes & Noble's on Saharan, or it's at Borders on Sahara and Decatur. And she goes, I'm not sure where that is. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll pick you up a book tonight because I've got to go to that area, and I'll bring it back to you tomorrow. And I know the author. I'll see if I can get him. No, actually, I said I know the author, but I didn't have her tell her I was going to have him sign it. So she came in again. I gave her the book, and she was reading back. She goes, this is interesting. That's so nice that you could do that. I wish I could have gotten the author to sign it. That's what she said. And I said, well, hand it to me. So she handed me the book, and I started signing it.
Oh no!
And she's going, what are you doing? I go, I'm
You're
signing it. You
impersonating.
wanted the author to sign it. And she said, did you really write that book? I said, yes, I did. She went home. I think she lived in Michigan. Of course, she had my business card, so she had my address and stuff. I get this letter in the mail about maybe a month later, and I open it up. I realize it's from her, and it's a critique of the book. And it starts off with, I read the book, and I thought, oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
She loved that book.
Uh-huh.
And I'm thinking, wow, I'm so glad I gave it to her because now she's good publicity. Even
Right.
though, you know, she was in Las Vegas on vacation, it's great publicity for her to take it back home and tell someone that she loved the book back there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I can get an audience there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she will remember that encounter forever because it was
Yes.
face to face.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like Ned said, it was autographed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most people never meet an author, which means they think of authors as celebrities.
Yeah.
And if they know a celebrity, then they're more important than they would if they don't know a celebrity. So
right.
it really, psychologically, it really works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, well, let me ask you something. When you're doing a book signing, do you feel like you're a celebrity?
No, I don't feel like it,
Okay.
but I know that the audience feels like it.
Yeah. I was just wondering because a lot of people, I do know some authors who do feel that way,
Yeah.
that they are the celebrity and that the attention should be given to them. I do know authors like that. And I was just wondering because I don't ever feel that way either. But I wonder if that helps though to have that persona.
If you're larger than life and you can pull it off, there's an author here in town, Maxwell Alexander Drake, who's really a good author, and he's a legend in his own mind, but he's a great personality. He can pull that off.
He's been on our show.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And he can pull it. Well, you know what I mean?
He was one of the first persons I ever interviewed.
You know, he can pull it off because he has that image. But I want to treat my readers with respect. But I know that they think of me as a celebrity. So when I autograph it, and I autograph it to them and say, how would you like me to autograph this? And what would you want to say? That makes them feel important. And I want to do that. It means that they're predisposed to like the book. I'd have to do a really bad job before they would decide they didn't want to like the book. I want them to like the book, and I want them to tell their friends. And if they think of me as a celebrity, then that's going to enhance it. But I treat them with respect because they are the reason I'm in business. Somebody buys my book, that's why I wrote it. For me, it's a business. I want to make money. I want to sell books.
That's true.
I could do other things. I could lay bricks. You know, I could pave roads. There's a lot of things I could do, but I choose to write and to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's when I signed when I brought the book back to her. She was terribly surprised because she was at lunch, and so I asked for her, and she came back, and so she came from the back, and I asked her. I said, "Well, how would you like me to autograph it for you?" And she said, "It's just like her eyes like were really wide," and so she said, she gave me her name, and so I said, and I wrote her name, and so I said to really cool girl,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and she's like, "Oh my God, it's just you made my day," and I'm like, "Well, you made my day."
Yeah.
So it was so fantastic. I felt like she felt like this was an author. I met my first author. And I felt like I met my first reader.
Right. That's exactly the way you feel.
And
Yeah.
It was terribly, it was terribly exciting.
It feels like such an honor
It
when
was.
they when
I
they
was
say,
honored.
I want your book.
Mm-hmm.
I was terribly honored, and I
Yeah.
ran back home and got it.
Right. Yes.
Have
Right.
any of your books? They're not in the stores or anything right now yet, are they?
No.
okay.
No, not
Okay.
yet.
Ned, your books, are they in the stores? I'm sure.
My books are out of print. My most recent published book was published in 2004. When it went out of print in 2012, I put it on Kindle. I've got 2 books that I'm going to be coming out with early in 2019.
Uh-huh.
But I had kind of gotten away from writing, and then I realized, no, this is where I really want to be.
Joyce, what about your books?
I have 2. My first is Lines of Listening, which is certainly available on Amazon and my website, which is linesoflistening.com. My second one is a follow-up to the first, which is Generations Intertwine, also available on my website. Both of them are also available on Amazon.
But they're not in the stores, though.
Oh, yes, you can buy them. The second one is on the website for Barnes & Noble's.
Okay.
Generations
And
Intertwine.
Jan, I know yours are not in the store. You've had yours in the store, though.
Yes.
Barnes & Noble.
Right.
Yeah.
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 And I just uploaded my next one last night onto Drafted Digital, which is Ripples in the Generations. So
Mhm.
that's a
Yes.
new process for me, and I'm walking myself through with help from them.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
The reason I ask that is because it is different when you have your book in the library or in the store. We do know, or everyone should know, that today most of the sales are online because
Right.
people are doing it several ways. They're ordering the book online, and it's shipped to you if you get a physical copy, or you can download a copy, or you can get an Audible. It depends on how you've marketed it, ebooks. So there's so many different ways to sell your book today. When I started out there, none of those existed except a physical book.
Right.
But because of when I started out, and Ned, you had to have started the same way. You had to do a physical book, and it would go into the stores in order to sell it, or you couldn't sell your
Right.
book.
Right.
So for me, the greatest thrill I ever had was walking into a bookstore and seeing that book on a shelf.
Yes.
And then I thought that was great until I went into the library when my book was in the library, and then I thought, oh my God, now I'm an author.
Yes.
There
Right.
you go. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, but today, there's more and more authors who never get their physical books in the store because they don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can go on and on with a list of best-selling authors who have sold ebooks.
Yeah.
And that's it. Because they don't need to go into the stores.
Yeah.
So it's a different world today. I kind of miss that interaction in a way, though.
I do too, but the market has changed in a number of ways. One is it is incredibly difficult to get a traditional publisher. It
Yes.
just really is.
Yes.
You've
Oh,
got to have
yes.
an agent, and it's incredibly difficult to get an agent. So a lot of people self-publish, and most bookstores don't want to take self-published books if they are properly distributed, which is to say that they are available through Ingram or one of the other distribution companies. They will order books for you. And here's a secret that people ought to know, is that if Barnes & Noble orders a book for you, if they don't carry it on the shelf, but they can get it that way, they buy 3. They buy 1 for you and put 2 others on the shelf, see if they sell. So if you have a network of people around the country, say, go buy a book from Barnes & Noble,
Right.
and you'll have 3 in the shelf.
Mhm.
And that's a way of getting, it's a
More
backdoor way of
sales.
getting into Barnes & Noble.
Well, one of the things too is once you get your books in the Barnes and Nobles, even if you're self-published, you can go through Ingram Spark, and they are a distributor. If you set it up through them, and everything's the back covers the way it's supposed to be, you've got your ISBNs, you've got your barcode the way it's supposed to be, you can get your book in the store as long as you're willing to do signings.
Yes.
And one of the things I know that does work, because I did this with an author I had her focus, or I tried to have her focus on a region. Because if you can cover a region, let's say the Midwest, for instance, and you do it well, and you do well at each signing, they're going to want you to go to the next region, which is what we were doing. And that really does work, and you can move up very quickly on their list as far as authors go. I think at one time she was like one for like 2 or 3 months in a row for self-published authors.
Yes.
For physical books. And that's really important if you're going to go out there and do signings, is don't go scattered. Don't go all over the place. There's no need to fly to New York. There's no need to fly to Florida and then back to California. Figure out a pathway. Figure out, cover that region and cover it well. And do well in that region, so that when you go to the next one, you're already getting a following. Because keep in mind, in the world today, no matter where you live, whether it's Las Vegas, Nevada, or you live in Atlanta, Georgia, you're going to tell someone somewhere else in the world, not just in the United States, in the world, about that book if you like it. So it's a world market today. It's no longer just the city you live in.
Yeah. Right. Now, with signings and things like that, if you're going to be traveling anyway, where you're going to be, see if you can't setting up. I have a friend who's in the Henderson Writers Group who last summer went to rural Wisconsin, where he grew up. It was his hometown.
Right.
And he went there for a couple of weeks. I said, set up a signing.
Yeah, now I do that as well.
Yeah.
If you're going somewhere anyway,
Yeah, but for people here in Las Vegas, for instance, I said, start with Vegas and then look at a day's drive. In a day's drive, you can reach Phoenix, Salt Lake City, Reno, L.A., and San Diego. Look to set up signings there. And you don't have to set up a signing in a bookstore, although that's great. But there are other places.
Right.
For instance, Valerie and I hope to talk to the center about doing a book launch there, which is an organization here, a cultural organization here in town for people who are with alternative lifestyles of all kinds. And we talked to them initially. They were very interested in it. And we're going to do a benefit for them. Now, if your book is for seniors, you can do it at a senior center.
Right.
You can do it at all kinds of places, and you're going to get the benefit because they will promote within their own organization, saying, come by on Wednesday to see Valerie. She's going to be doing a book signing to benefit the center or whatever.
Well, we have someone who actually sets up book signings at senior centers, and it can be anyone's book. Children's books, young adult books, science fiction, crime, true crime. Because what these seniors are actually looking for something to do, and that's an activity for them to go and attend that event, and they can interact with the author. And it's kind of like you said, they feel like I'm getting to know the author. So it is good to set these up. They don't have to be in a bookstore. And as a matter of fact, you can do just as well with sales in a venue like that as you can at a bookstore.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I've had authors go into a bookstore and sell 1 or 2 copies. But you can go to an event like that, and everyone they're interested in what you have. So, you can really do well.
Yeah, and I have been to a couple of readings recently at the Writer's Block, which is a local independent bookstore. And these were readings of poetry, which it does not generally sell well. And they sold out a couple of cases worth of books because people wanted to go and talk to the poet, the author, and have her autograph. I did, and I was very glad I did because it's a great book. But the point is, you can find an audience anywhere, and then persuade them. As you said, senior centers, it's a great place for kids' books because they have grandkids.
Right, absolutely. And that's the way you have to think about it. Don't think about it's a senior. Think about who they know. And if they buy something for a grandkid, now they're passing it on to their kid, who's an adult, and they see it, they're going to tell someone else they know. So it's that passing it along. It's word of mouth.
Yes. Let me give you a suggestion when you go to bookstores, is you're going to either they're going to order the books from the pub, where you're printing them, or you'll bring them along. but at the end of the event, say if there's any books unsold, let me autograph them for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, two things. First of all, autograph books sell well, so the stores generally like to. But two, they can't return them.
Well, I want to correct
There
you
you
on
go.
that.
Oh, okay, please do.
They do. If you go through Ingram
Uh-huh.
and a store gets them, they tell you that they can't return them. But I've had them returned.
Really?
As a publisher, I've had numerous books returned that were autographed
Really?
from the stores. Yes.
Okay, well that's
But the good thing is that those books can still go back to the author, and the author, even though they're
Awesome.
autographed, can still sell those because even if they're autographed, when someone buys a book, you know this. If you autograph and come back, I'll personalize it for you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
it
I
doesn't matter
see.
that it's autographed because oftentimes, if you go into a Barnes and Noble, for instance, there's in a local store. Here they have a section that's for local authors.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're already autographed. But if you go back in for a second signing, they just pull those and bring them to you. It says on there autographed.
Yeah.
But you just personalize it for them. So you can
Nice.
still sell those books.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've actually had returns from
That's
Barnes and
well,
Noble.
thanks for correcting that because I did not know that.
Oh, and I've had numerous.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. Because usually when you go in, I've had authors who I try to keep it at a minimum when it comes to new authors
mhm.
because no one knows who you really are.
Right.
So if you're on the road, it's great to go on the road and set up signings along the way because I have
Mhm.
had authors do that if they're driving. But the thing is, keep in mind, no one knows you. So even if you're in their newsletter, that doesn't mean you're going to generate sales.
Mhm.
So try and keep a minimum, like 15, 20, no more than 20 books.
Mhm.
Because if you're going through a distributor, and Barnes & Noble only orders through the distributor unless you're doing a local event, then you're taking a chance those books will be returned to you. And then now you're going to be paying for shipping as well to have
Yeah.
them shipped back.
Mm-hmm.
So keep it at a minimum. And I find that some authors didn't listen, and then we would get numerous books returned,
Got it.
even though they had been autographed.
Right.
So,
Good point. Good
Okay.
point.
Can we cut for a minute?
oh sure, absolutely.
I know that when I was doing my initial entry into publishing or writing or just figuring out what I was going to do with independent writing, I looked for people who wrote like I did, and I looked for the most successful. And I thought to myself, how am I going to be known in this area? Because I did not know how to write a book. How do I design a cover? How do I do the spine? What is an ISBN number? How do I transfer a URL? I don't know how to do all these things.
Right.
I've never written a book before. So what I did is I looked for a person who wrote in my genre, and I had to figure out what genre was. You know, I've never written a book. People were throwing words all over. So what I did is I got on the internet and I sent a message to the person that I thought was most prominent, and they didn't know me from Adam, and I just sent them a message. Well, a lot of people's like, I never heard from them, but every now and then I got a message back from like, who are you and what do you want? And then I'd respond, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to write a book. I don't know what all these words mean. I don't know how to do a cover. I don't know how to do chapters. How do you do that stuff? And I'd give them my little bit of my background and say, this is what I want to do. I don't know how to do it. Where do I start? And then again, that would filter down to probably no response back, but then maybe one or two would. And so then the person that actually filtered down, maybe one or two people said, okay, here's how you start your first chapter, da-da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
And that PR got me to a person who was really able to say, okay, I've published this many things. I know how to help you with your first book. This is how you do your first chapter. And I've gotten a relationship with that person. Now, I might not have met them, but that PR got me into a blog, which got me
Yes.
into a relationship, which got me into a discussion. And that person now helps me with designing websites or getting me into group discussions or whatever. So that PR has been very fruitful because I just kind of set it out there and said, where do we go?
And you know, speaking along that line, creating your own platform is what you were doing. We had the And I Thought ladies on, and Nona and Jade, and I have to tell you, they took this and ran with it because they
they
wrote a
did.
poetry book, and they
Yeah.
didn't know
Yes.
what to do with the poetry book.
Right.
So they sat there. Well, Nona said, "Well, why don't we create our own magazine?" And
Yes.
so they
Yes.
created their own magazine. And then
They
after
were so
that,
cool.
and Jade's going, can we do that? How do we do that? And she went to Google and she
Yes.
Googled and figured out how to do it.
I loved that episode.
Oh, you love that? I know. I
Loved
tell
it.
everyone, you've got to listen
Yes,
to that
Oh, I
episode.
they were
watched it.
fantastic.
Oh, because it's truly how you brand, And then from there, they said, okay, now what can we do next? And Jade's going like, what do you mean, what can we do next? Well, we got to do something else to get our name out there. So then they said, let's do our own podcast. So then they did their own podcast.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah, and then the next thing you know, then Jade's, and then Well-Known's going, now what? And then Jade goes, what do you mean now what? And then she goes, well, let's create our own YouTube channel. So, and then after that, it's let's create our show for Amazon, and go, how are we going to get a show on Amazon? And now they're getting ready to go into their third season. I mean, it's amazing if you sit down and think what you just said. Go to Google. Don't be afraid to use Google to do what you need to do to find out what you need to find out.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to have. That must be an alarm. It's great to have. It's great to have an agent if you can get one. But we talked about how difficult that is. Whereas with a PR person, you can hire a PR person.
Right.
You can't hire an agent.
No.
Because if you're paying someone to be your agent, then you really don't have an agent.
That's unethical.
Yeah, I did that, just so you know. When I was younger, I didn't know.
Oh, no, it's unethical for the agent. It's not for you.
Yeah.
It's not unethical for you to hire them. It's unethical for them to take money to represent you.
Yeah, the first agent I ever had, I didn't realize I shouldn't have been having to pay a fee for someone to represent me.
Right.
And you learn the hard way. But when it comes to a PR person, you're hiring them specifically to do specific things. Yeah. And I'm not opposed to that because of what Joyce said. It's a difficult world out there to maneuver when it comes to knowing where to go or what to do with your book.
Exactly.
And it can be overwhelming. Even for me, as many years as I've been doing this, it's still daunting for me. I still can't figure out what to do here or what to do there. And I listen to people every single day that I interview someone, and I listen to what they say. But it's a lot easier to hear what they say than it is to go out there and do what they say.
Exactly.
And I admire Well-Known and I admire Jade for what they do. But the thing is that that's their whole thing. They're trying to outdo what they did next. What can I do now? And they've got the energy. I don't have that much energy anymore.
I know, they did. They were full of energy. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
they're unique, and it's not easy to replicate what they've done.
No. I mean, I admire them, and I'm glad they shared what they've done. And I hope that some people will pick up on that. But the reality is there are times when you need help, and there's nothing wrong with going after that help if you need it. And you can afford it, and that's why I wanted to ask you. You can go out there and you can spend $3,000-$4,000 a month for a PR person, or you can spend less. Jan, you had a PR person when we started out, and it's really difficult too. It's kind of like what you said, Ned. Yeah. If someone's saying, "Well, for X amount of dollars, I will get you X amount of interviews." But that doesn't generate sales. There's got to be more than just radio. They've got to be doing something else for you.
Yes, and those people who will promise deliverables, don't trust them, because there is no
you can't guarantee.
No, short of buying the New York Times, I can't get you in the New York Times. I've gotten clients in the New York Times, but I can't promise it. But if you'll buy it for me, then I will get you in there. That's about it. But there are ways that you can approach things that work. Here, let me give you an example. And I've had this published a number of times, but I don't see anybody doing it. I'm not sure why, because it works 100% of the time. First of all, the news media thinks that anybody who's an author is an expert. And the psychological reason is they all want to write books too. So they're going to respect an author because they want that respect when they finally get around to writing their book. Your book is about something. Valerie's is about alternative lifestyles and erotic. That it's fiction doesn't matter. She still lives the dream. So if a news story comes out about that, a congressman comes out or something like that, take that
and run with it.
Take that, run with it. First, you write a short blog, 250 words, what you would say to explain this. Then you contact the news media and said, I'm an expert. I wrote this book that's out right now. Here's how I would explain to your audience how this works. I tried this out 5 times.
Okay.
In those 5 times, I got on Cavuto 5 times. I got on Imus 5 times. I got on 56 other radio interviews, and I got on over 100 internet interviews.
My goodness.
It worked. Cost me nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it works. All you have to do is present yourself as an expert and tell them what you will explain. Because with a 24/7 news cycle, they're constantly churning, looking for new experts.
They need people.
They troll.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
troll.
Well, I hate to cut this short, but
Sure.
we're running out of time.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
Wow.
So I'd like to thank our guests, Valerie Runyan and Ned Barnett, along with my co-hosts, Janet Coursey and Joyce Gatchenberger. Ned, where can we learn about your books?
You can learn about
your
my
business.
books and my business at barnettmarcom.com.
All right. And Valerie?
Well, my basically my Facebook author page at the moment.
Okay.
But my book is on sale at shop.bookbaby.com. That's where my soft cover is, and there's a version of my ebook as well. And like Ned said, it's also still on Amazon. as
Okay.
well.
And Joyce, real quick.
Yes, my website is linesoflistening.com. I also maintain a health and wellness blog, which is linesoflisteningblog.wordpress.com.
And Jan?
JanetCoursey.com and Amazon.
All right. And to find out more about our guests, just go to aspectsofwriting.com. And there you'll find all our links to our guests as well as where you can listen to the show. We're available on 14 terrestrial stations. We're on the internet on iTunes, iHeartRadio, AMFM247.com syndicates this show. We're also on Roku TV. We also have a YouTube channel. In addition to that, I understand we're on Amazon now. I have not listened to it yet on Amazon, but I understand we are on Amazon. That's through our syndication with AMFM247.com. We're also on Blog Talk Radio on Amazon on AMFM247.com. We're on at 1 o'clock on Saturdays. That's Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah.
And then we rebroadcast the show on Blog Talk Radio at 9 o'clock p.m. on Sundays, Pacific Standard Time. So until next week, this is your host, James Kelly, reminding you, if you can dream it, you can write it. Thank you, everyone, for being on the show.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.